Welcome to the Warren Files, presenting true insights and experiences from the paranormal world, with your host, Chris McKinnell, Director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Warren Files. I'm your host, Chris McKinnell, Director of the Warren Legacy Foundation for Paranormal Research. And today I'm here with a very special guest, Cathy Rogers. Cathy, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, Cathy, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. Well, I'm actually the president and case manager for the Edmonton Paranormal Society. I am also a medium, psychic, intuitive. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much my background as far as that goes. So we've actually been doing I've been working with the Edmonton Paranormal Society for approximately 10 years now.
That's great. And what kind of cases do you take on with them?
Well, mostly when we first started, we really actually took on just about any case, to be honest. As we started evolving, we don't do cases as much as we used to. Now we mostly do a lot of consultations, but we haven't really actually handled like a lot of negative entity type of cases. We have in some cases, or where we've walked in and then realized, oh, we're dealing with something a little bit different than we actually thought maybe it might be. But we've probably done a few thousand cases over the last 10 years.
Wow, that's quite a bit.
Yeah.
And these are boots on the ground type of cases you're going into?
They are, yeah. The last few years, they've mostly been consultations or over the phone, or maybe we found a team, just because our team has sort of trimmed down over the years and we all have, I guess, more other things to do. I've been working more as, building my own business, doing readings, psychic work, that sort of thing. But we actually do an awful lot of consultations over the phone. And in the first, I'd say 5 years, we probably did close to, I'd say at least 1,500 cases. If they weren't complete boots on the ground, they were at the very least where we would spend an awful lot of time with these people, whether it's over the phone, they might have been long distance, so we couldn't travel. So we did an awful lot of phone or even video consultations.
And you found that most of the time these were not negative hauntings?
Very rarely. We did have a couple, but we actually found an awful lot of the cases that did work. Some of them were actually just not paranormal, right. But I would say a good portion of them were more of a positive energy. We actually found that an awful lot of cases is that things were starting to stir up when somebody's abilities were starting to work. Like usually they would have a young teen in the house, or maybe a child that was starting to come into their abilities, or even an adult who was starting, I guess the word would be awakening to their abilities. They might have always been sensitive, but as their abilities were starting to develop, we discovered that they were having more paranormal activity.
Yeah, I've run into that many, many, many times.
Yeah.
Either their hormones are going and they're tapping into that energy, and just things start to manifest around them as an expression of what they're going through.
Absolutely. And I also found too, I always kind of, made it a little bit of a joke, I guess, in the extent that, I think that they really just want you to use your abilities. And this is sort of, their way of expressing this. This is a time to, now that I found that a lot of times too, is if it wasn't a teen or if it was an adult in the house, that they might be in a place of comfort in their life as well. I don't know if you ever noticed that, but this was more for the when the paranormal was starting to kind of stir up. They've had their kids, they probably have their career, And now things are just going weird in their house. And it's almost as though, okay, well, it's like you have the time to develop your ability. Oh, spirit is sort of saying, get to it, get your butt in gear.
That's very interesting to me. Usually, in my experience, it's always been kind of the opposite. It's when things are in upheaval and things are tossed about in the home. And by that I mean the people are having troubles. That's manifest like poltergeist phenomena.
Absolutely, and we've actually run into that too many times as well. So then it's a matter of sort of interviewing, and as you know, we're interviewing and seeing where they are, seeing what's going on. We've actually run into that. Sorry, that's my phone. We've actually run into that as well, where, they might just be starting to have chaos in their personal lives. And then the things are starting to manifest exactly like you had said as a poltergeist. And actually, that is how I personally got into paranormal investigation for myself. Well, before my son was born, my daughters and I lived in this house, and I was actually working 3 jobs at the time. I was crazy busy. I have two girls. One is like preteen, and, the other one is, little, but I mean, it was just constant go, 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 go. And a lot of, I wouldn't say stress. I was also going through a divorce at the same time. So you've got everything going on at once, and you don't even have time to think. And we started actually, how it originally started is, my daughter was playing with a Barbie doll, and my oldest one, but she had a friend over, and they weren't really playing Barbies. We just kept hearing, I kept hearing them giggling and running down the hall. And I was like, what the heck is going on? What are you guys doing? And she goes, watch this. If we put this Barbie here and we leave the room for a minute, when we come back, the Barbie's in a different place. I was like, are you crazy? What is going on? So sure enough, this is exactly what was happening. And I was like, okay, so what is going on? Like, this isn't normal. So the very next day, I came home from work and I went and picked up my daughters. They were at my mom's next door, and we walked into the house, and there was Barbie dolls, Chris, everywhere in this home. My daughter had a great big tub of Barbie dolls. So there was probably good 30 Barbie dolls in there, and they were everywhere. Like I'm talking sitting on between the tops of the sink, on the ceiling fan in the kitchen, on top of the fridge, in corners of the house. And I was angry because I thought it was my daughter who had maybe come over to the house, because they were right next door at my mom's. My mom was like, nope, they hadn't left my sight ever since, this morning. It wasn't them. And so, you're still of disbelief. Like, you're still kind of, it's got to be my kids or something, somebody's messing with me.
Yeah, you got to look for the natural explanation first.
Absolutely. But then my daughter and I, like, my oldest one would be at school, and my little one was still preschool, like not quite into school yet, maybe like morning or whatever. But she was like glued to me. I mean, this child never left my sight. And we would hear something. I would be getting ready to go to work, and I would hear something in the living room, and I would walk back in, and there would be videotapes stacked up.
I'm sorry, there'd be what?
Videotapes. This was back in the day when there were still videotapes. Yeah. And you're thinking, okay, what is going on? And I'd look at her and I said, like, did you do this? Like, what's going on? But then they would go into their rooms, and my youngest one would come running out saying there was a little girl in there. We would have people coming over to the house and say that, like they would be in the bathroom, and why did you open the door to the bathroom? But I'd be sitting in the kitchen. And this just continued. It was just like 3 years of this. It actually got to the point, and where you see those horror movies where everybody's like sleeping in one room. That was our house. Yeah. My daughters went
into those houses.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so what I did is I actually ended up selling that house almost immediately, because the activity was it was getting, my kids were seeing one of our cats who had passed away, and they'd be like, well, how come, and the cat's name was Salem, how come Salem's in the house? Like, she's dead. I just saw her. She was on my bed. But this was, So, so, of course, everybody's sort of looking at each other going, well, like, you told me the cat was dead, but here she is, but she's not there, so it was becoming like too much. It was just literally becoming too much. And I wouldn't say that I was terrified in the extent that I didn't want to be in the house alone, or that I felt like I needed to hang crosses or anything like that. But you're starting to doubt your own mental state.
Yeah. That's
right.
That's perfectly normal for people.
Yeah. And, then you're you're looking at your kids going, okay, like, how come you guys are screwing with me? But they're looking at me, probably thinking the same thing. So it was just becoming to the point where, if you mentioned it to somebody, you just get, because this was probably maybe around the year 2000. So, this wasn't paranormal activity at that point. Yes, you had your odd occasional horror show, but it wasn't all that. It wasn't
the way it is today. Yeah.
That's exactly. It wasn't as open. And so when you mentioned it to somebody, you just get these looks like maybe you need to see a doctor.
So what did you think it ended up being?
Well, okay. So at one point, because the girls kept seeing a little girl within the home, there was at one point there where my youngest daughter, she got a brand new Barbie. And we had a dog. We had this dog, for probably a few months already. And he was a beautiful dog. They were best friends. They hung out together all the time. And she got this brand new Barbie, and she went and opened the Barbie, and you could literally see this dog change almost instantly. And he ran at her and attacked her. And it got to the point where she couldn't even go near the dog because he just lost his mind. And I thought at first, okay, what made me start to think is that I think this is sort of where my abilities, I'd always been sensitive, or, psychic, I guess would be the way to describe it. I could always knew when the phone was going to ring or who was going to be on the phone or that sort of thing. But I just, for some reason in my head, I got the idea, and it just like popped into my head that I'm thinking when she opened this brand new Barbie, that this dog, maybe whoever was in the house, this little girl that everybody kept seeing, maybe she stood beside my daughter at that time, and the dog confused my daughter for whatever this entity was. That was the only explanation that I could come up with. And this dog, like, had to take it back to the SPCA. We couldn't keep it. Like, it was or if given the chance, like I had to keep it tied up all the time.
Yeah, I have
like there was just nothing.
Theory for you.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Well, animals are far more psychic than most humans are, and they're far more aware of what's in the environment, as you pointed out just a moment ago. It is possible that little girl really wanted that doll, the ghost,
right?
And that she threw a tantrum, and it affected the dog. It's kind of like oppression.
I never even thought of that. I just assumed the dog might have a confused, my daughter for whatever it was, but that would make a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. It would explain why the dolls were being played with so much. The little girl coveted them. She loved them.
Yeah.
And, the dog reacted to that.
Well, and it was the thing, because my daughter is like Snow White, like if she walks down the street, cats follow her, dogs love her, you know what I mean? So we knew it had anything to do with her, right? Like she wasn't mean to the dog. This was her best friend, but it was just the most bizarre thing I had ever seen. Like this, like you could almost literally see this dog's eyes roll back into its head. It was just so angry whenever it, and it was, so I ended up selling that house. Actually, I put it on the market and sold it within a day.
Wow.
I was like, and here in Canada, we don't have to disclose anything. It's unless, as far as I know, there was no real that said, hey, haunted house, right? Like come by. So, but I wanted to go up to the house and ask them, do you guys have any trouble? But, I just figured it's probably better to leave it alone. But
And plus,
then we moved into the
most people can move into a house and never have any experiences. It was probably the combination of your abilities, and I'm sure your daughter must have some abilities as well. Is that the case? Cathy?
Oh,
yeah. Hi.
Hello?
Are you there?
Oh, hi. Yeah. For some reason, it cut right out.
I was asking you, and we'll edit this. So let me try again.
Okay.
Does your daughter have abilities as well?
They both do, actually. Yes.
Makes sense.
Both of them are quite sensitive as well. And even while we were living in the house, there was times where they would just, my oldest one especially, she, it was one of those neighborhoods where you never get fire trucks or police or any, and if you do get a policeman, down the street, everybody comes out of their house to see what's going on. Right? And she was sitting at home one day. It was after school, and she was sitting there watching the TV and just, eating a snack. And she had her back towards the window, so she couldn't see out the window. But all of a sudden, all fire trucks and police and the whole bit came barreling down the street. And you can't really see down at the school from where we were, but it was just a block away. And I said, oh my gosh, I wonder what's going on. And she said, oh, David got hit by a car, but he'll be okay because the teacher took him to the hospital and he just broke his leg.
And yet she hadn't even been down there.
Nope, she actually was sitting there watching TV. She didn't even turn her back towards the window to see what was going on herself. She just sat there and it just came out of her mouth. And so the next day we went to the school, I took her to school, and sure enough, this kid, David, got hit by a car and he had broken his leg. And the teacher, it was, I'm just looking at her going, what?
And that's probably why the haunting was so powerful in your home, is because of the three of you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it was just the whole combination of all of it. It was just
that perfect storm.
The perfect storm. That's exactly it. And I had my own stress and stuff like that absolutely going on. So it just seemed to be that extra addition.
Absolutely. And that also explains why Salem, your cat, showed up to them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so too.
My cat, Tom, was around for 19 years. And when she died, we kept seeing her walk around the house for a few days.
Isn't that wild though? Yeah. Hey, animals like even animal spirits like coming around to see us. And I mean, you hear that all the time too. Somebody seeing their cat or the dog that's passed away or, and,
yeah,
I'm actually hoping when my snake passes away, I go and see him because I don't really want to see him.
I'm sorry, that didn't come through. What was that?
I said I have a boa constrictor, and I'm hoping that when he passes away, I don't happen to see him slithering around.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'm going to ask you to give me a photo of that we'll put up on the podcast.
Yeah. Right.
You and your pet boa.
Yeah, me and my pet boa. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, he's pretty cool. Yeah. No, and then it's funny because when we moved and I had my son, things actually followed us here as well. Or I don't know if it followed us here, but we stirred up stuff within this residence as well. And even my son to this day, he's 15 now, and this kid could freak you right out. Like he'll come down and he'll say, I wanted to just look up this artist or whatever it was, and I don't know why, I just felt like I needed to look them up. Like I remember the more specific case would be like Prince. A couple of days before Prince passed away, he came down, he goes, I don't know why, I just wanted to I just wanted to listen to Prince. He goes, that's so weird, I don't even like Prince. Next day or the day after, Prince passed away. And I tell you, this kid does it all the time, and it scares
So he's got some precognition.
He really does, yeah. And even him at school, he's been, he was scared to play on the playground a couple of times, and his teacher kind of knew what he was about. She recognized abilities in him, and yeah, he wouldn't play on the playground for about 2 weeks, and he kept saying that there was a kid with a needle on the playground, and his teacher kind of caught on, and we had talked about it, and she said, he can just hang out with me, until he feels better about going to play on the playground. But she did her own research. Turned out, sure enough, a kid had done an overdose. There was an overdose in the park, that same playground, about 20 years before.
Wow.
So
that's such a blessing that you had a teacher who was understanding.
she was amazing. She was amazing. And I had recognized his abilities long before, but when the teacher comes to you and says, have you ever heard of an indigo child? Like, she was really cautious about approaching me on it. And when I said yes, and then we were just able to open up this dialogue. And she said, he'll walk up to kids at school and say, I'm sorry that you got into trouble last night, or I'm sorry you got a spanking, or I'm so, you know what I mean? Or sorry about this, or, whatever it was, or how do you like your new toy? It was just, he would just know. And he is still to some degree like this. I mean, he's 15 now, so part of it is hogwash to him, but the other part is not.
Right.
So, yeah, he remains open, but he is a bit of a skeptic at the same time.
Sure, and that's normal. As we get older, we become more skeptical. Society teaches us that this stuff isn't real.
Absolutely, yeah, and I think that to some degree, and going into the other aspect of it is, I think it's healthy to have a normal, open attitude, but it's when, you and I have both dealt with these cases where everything is paranormal to somebody and they will refuse to look at the normal behind it.
Exactly. Yeah, and literally 9 out of 10 times it is normal.
Yes, absolutely. And it's really just a matter of changing your perspective or allowing yourself to remain open to the normal as opposed to assuming it's all paranormal. And, we found in quite a few cases is that maybe there is something slightly paranormal within the house, but a good portion of the time it's going to be harmless. It's not demonic. It's not negative. It might be just something passing through, but the hysterics of the people that you're dealing with can create more of that negative energy or that feeling of that negative energy, right?
Absolutely. And that's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. That, when we're faced with something as simple as a human spirit, which is, grandma.
Right.
What is there to be afraid of?
Absolutely.
It's only your fear of the unknown. And that ramps up the terror, and that makes it into a negative haunting. Not that grandma's going to do anything bad to you, but every little bump, every little knock is going to terrify you.
Yeah, you're turning it into a negative experience on your own, right, as opposed to the spirit being an actual negative something,
right? And
right?
That's something I really want the public to understand. That it's usually nothing. And if it is something, it's usually not a bad something.
Exactly. I found that the most difficult cases were when somebody would call you and, they're hysterical and they're screaming or whatever it was, but they automatically right away assume I've got a demon. And it's like, well, chances are, no, you don't. But you're turning it into an experience that is absolutely going to be negative for you, even if the entity itself is perfectly harmless, or maybe just passing through, and absolutely. And especially if you do have a sensitive, within the home, whether it's somebody young or whether it's somebody coming into their abilities or awakening, I guess, you're going to be like a bright light in to something, right?
Okay.
Something on the other side, you're going to, exude a different vibration. You're going to be a brighter light to them. And of course, they're going to be attracted to it.
Yeah, I always say that you're like a lighthouse in their darkness.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. We actually just developed a method for people, because what we were doing is, of course, when you sort of first start up, we were probably about 2 years into investigating, and we were every weekend we were out investigating. And I mean, to some degree, it's starting to impede your life, especially for clients that were of not, and I hate to say this in this way, but it is the truth. There are people that just want the attention from it.
Absolutely.
Right? They want the attention of being haunted, or they want the attention of having a paranormal experience, or whatever it is. And that's their experience. They can turn it into what they want. But when you're a volunteer and you're taking your personal time, to try to help these people, it can impede on your own personal space and vibrations and your own life. And especially when you're getting calls at 2 or 3 in the morning, with somebody being hysterical over a door slamming with a window open.
Exactly. Yeah. I found, most of the time people want you to reassure them that it's not the paranormal. But there
Right.
are those who absolutely are invested in the idea. No, this is paranormal. This is not natural. And I just want everyone to know.
Yes. And I found that those are the most difficult cases. And to be perfectly honest, there have been those cases where we've had to walk away. And, not because you don't want to help the people, or not that you don't want to be generous, with your time, but they are just absolutely not going to have the understanding, or refuse to have the understanding that, it's nothing. It's really nothing, right. And what they're doing is they're actually turning it into something that's going to, or could possibly develop into a negative, because that hysteria is going to bring up something of a more negative nature.
Yeah, as my grandmother used to say, like attracts like. And if you're throwing out a lot of negative energy, you're going to attract something negative.
Absolutely. And a lot of people, right off the bat, we've even had cases where, their teenagers, especially their daughters, are going, and they'll phone us and say, "Oh, I think she's possessed." No, she's a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have sworn I should have named my daughter Linda Blair at one point in her life, but I mean, she's not possessed. No. Yeah. And so what we did is we had developed a technique. So over the course of this time, because our personal time was really being, invaded, right? So we actually developed a method, and we called it the notebook method. And what we did is we would give the clients a notebook and a spiral, like with the spiral back on it. And what we did is we got them to write out each experience, but on a separate piece of paper, and it put in as much detail as they possibly could. So even if it was a matter of a coffee cup moving from one side of the counter to the next, write it all out. What were you doing? Can you remember the time? Do you remember the time of day? What day was it approximately? You might not have the exact date, but was it a Wednesday? Was it a Monday? Whatever, right? And we found that the more details they wrote out, they seemed to be calmer. So it was sort of like the law of attraction. When you're writing something out, you're releasing it. And then we had them turn the page, and each incident was on a separate page. And we got them to record those incidences for about 2 weeks before we came to do an investigation, or to even make the attempt to do an investigation. We said, write out each experience, and each family member would have their own notebook. But then we made certain rules too, and don't talk about it within the house, because that energy, and it's so funny. It's like, when parents are fighting in the bedroom, they think that that's a good place to fight because the kids won't hear them, but all they're doing is building up that energy of negative.
It's
right?
recognition. You're giving recognition to what's in the home. You're building it up. You're feeding it.
Exactly. And so we would tell them, I said to them, you go stand outside, the earth can take it. Right. Or go to Tim Hortons or well, that's that's our coffee place here in Canada. Go to Starbucks or, go to a shopping mall, but, spread that energy. Right. Because when you're talking about it within your home, that's all you're bringing into your home is just all of this junk. Right. Or all of this negative or scared energy. And, the other thing we would do is we would have them not keep it beside the notebook beside them. So they'd have to put it up somewhere that was safe for them to reach it, but it wasn't easy access. Because now what you're doing is let's say you're watching TV and you hear a door slam from upstairs. If you have the notebook right beside you, it's too easy to write in it and go, oh, door slammed at, 9:53 p.m., blah, blah, blah. But if you have to get off the couch, right, go get that notebook and then write into it, chances are you've now created the paranormal into the normal, because you might actually decide on your own and go, that really wasn't worth it for me to go to do all this effort to go write that down. And so what you've done is you have alleviated that fear and turn the paranormal into the normal.
And you told me this a couple of years ago, and I've used this, and I love it. I think it's wonderful. It diminishes that recognition, and it doesn't feed the energy into the home again. I actually make the people put it out in the garage or in their car.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, because the more work that you have to do for it, you're going to go, oh, I can probably, your brain is automatically going to go, oh, you know what? That's really not worth my effort. I actually really like that out in the car or someplace that, it's easy to, it's easy to access, but it's going to take that effort to go do so.
Exactly. Plus, you're outside of the house. And so you're not feeding in that energy even when you are writing it up.
Oh, that's a brilliant point. Yes. That's brilliant. I like that a lot. Actually, that's really smart. Yeah, it's, and a lot of people too is they might be writing in their notebook and doing all of these steps, but then they have somebody who knows that they're dealing, or they may have talked to one of their friends or their girlfriends or family, and then those people start bringing, so, you'd have to make it very clear, no talking about it in the home. And this includes your family. This includes your friends. This includes whoever is coming into the house. And there's absolutely no reason to go look into the notebook, because reading all of the things that you may have already dealt with, once you've written it down, you don't need to look at it ever again. You never need to turn those pages over.
That's right.
If somebody, because you've written it out. And so if somebody needs to know about it, you can hand them the notebook and you stick them outside, and they can go read about it outside if they particularly feel like it. But I find that the more that you have to read or the more you have to write, it just calms you down, and it takes away those negative feelings, those fears, and all of that. It
purges them. I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
But, a suggestion I would have for anyone listening to this, don't share that notebook with loved ones or friends or anyone else who are then going to be hyper vigilant in your home.
Right.
Just share it with the researchers that you're working with.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that too. Unfortunately, with a lot of the cases that we had, there was other people with it outside of the home that had known about it.
Of course.
And then they're kind of trying to come in and they're trying to bring that energy again. And that's where you have to kind of stop it and go, okay, no, if they really need to know, they can go sit outside and read about it. Chances are most people, again, are too lazy to really take that outside and actually read it.
Yeah, I agree with you. With you.
Yeah, they tend to just kind of go, oh, okay, well, I'll just abide by how you're feeling. And then, occasionally, of course, you've got that one pushy one that really wants to know, but, go outside. Here you go. Take it.
Go to Tim Hortons.
Yeah, go to Tim Hortons, have a coffee.
What were some of the more unusual things that you've run into?
Oh gosh. There's always one case that continuously, it's one of those cases that you couldn't figure out. And it was the most interesting thing. So we had gone to this house. It was an acreage, actually, just outside of town. And we actually had the house to ourselves. The owners had, given, it was a friend of one of our investigators. They had given her the keys and said, have at it. So we decided this was a really good time because usually the clients are with us when we do an investigation. So you're of course trying to remain as professional as possible and, the whole bit. But we decided, let's have some fun. Let's use methods and techniques that we've always wanted to kind of try, but we don't want to try them for the first time in front of a client. And so we had, different things like dowsing rods and, we just had fun. But before we even got there, we were actually in Calgary the night before, and we come home to a snow, took us like 6 hours to drive, 3 hours. And it was crazy. So we were all exhausted. But we had gone to this house the next night, and there was two of us that were a little late, and we already had about 5 investigators at this house. And they said that they were sitting in the living room. Now, remember, there's no houses. This is an acreage. There's no houses for probably a good kilometer around us, or around that house. And they said that they were sitting there, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang on the front door, like somebody was knocking on the door. And they thought it was us, but yet our car's not there. There's no footprints in the snow. So that was kind of the start of the night, I guess. And then at one point we were doing an investigation in the living room. One of my other investigators, Darian, and I were sitting in the living room. And now this was like one of those houses, like the main floor is actually, it's like a bi-level. So when you're sitting in the living room, you're probably still a good 6 to 10 feet above the actual ground. And we were sitting there and we were doing investigation, and all of a sudden on the outside of the wall facing, to the outside wall to the house, there was again, bang, 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 bang. And her and I just about went right through the roof, because there was no way that this could be a human. I mean, this was a good 10, 12 feet above the ground. This, where the wall was. So we couldn't come up with an explanation for that. There was just nothing. It wasn't the pipes. It wasn't, anything like the furnace was newer. There was nothing natural about it. So at one point, different things like this kept going on throughout the night. Now, their basement was very open, but it was unfinished, but they had a lot of gym equipment, your typical junk that people put into a basement, right? Mm-hmm. But it was very open concept. So there was no, once you walked down into the basement, you were basically in the basement. And I had gone, it was the weirdest thing actually, because I had gone down there earlier in the night and nothing seemed to happen. But we had gone upstairs and we were sort of taking a break. And at one point, Chris, I kept hearing in my head, go downstairs, come downstairs. And I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to go do that. And I picked up some equipment and I grabbed it. And one of the other investigators says, where are you going? And I said, well, I'm going to go to the basement. And he's like, well, not alone, you're not, right? I'll come with you. So him and I went down there. And we were starting to do an investigation down there. And we were just sitting on the ground and, we were out in the open. And we could hear everybody coming down from downstairs. Or from upstairs, sorry. They came downstairs. You could hear them kind of talking. It was a big house. So even though it was an open basement, you couldn't hear the exact words. And they were all standing down at the bottom of the stairs. And then they went back up. And we just kept investigating. We just figured that they were probably doing their own, whatever they were doing, right? Didn't pay much attention to it. And then at one point we went into one of the bedrooms and we were on the bed and doing an investigation in there. And all of a sudden the door flew open, but there was nobody, there was nobody there. The door just flew open, but there was nobody there. The door closed and we went, holy shit. Okay. And of course, that was the one time where we had no video and we had no audio because they just died. Like our camera, we just ran out of tape, right? So we thought, okay, well, this is a good time to go back upstairs. Let's do that. We walked up the stairs and everybody's like, where the hell were you? We're like, what are you talking about? Like they were angry, Chris, like angry, like, you know, well, they were outside apparently looking for us and we could hear them outside, you know what I mean? But we just figured they were investigating something. So we didn't pay much attention to it. And, we were probably gone for about an hour and apparently they couldn't find us for over an hour.
Didn't they go downstairs?
They did, but apparently they could not see us. We were sitting right there in front of them. They could not see us. And the funny thing is we could see them, but they could not see us. And they all of them, like there was about 5 of them and nobody could see us, but we were right out there in the open. And the weird thing is that we had asked about the door, like who came down, like we had told them what happened. The door flew open and then the door closed. And one of the investigators goes, yeah, I looked in that bedroom. I opened the door. I didn't see either of you. And so I just closed the door. So we couldn't see her. All we saw was the door fly open, but we were sitting right there. Like one of us was on the bed, one of us was on the floor, but we were like, it wasn't like pitch black. I mean, it was like you couldn't see if there was moonlight coming in or there was like the light from the hallway. She easily could have seen us if, you know, but we didn't see her either. So it was the weirdest experience. And then
like you were in a different dimension.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And
I've never had that happen to me.
This was our first time. And I mean, we went through everything we possibly could on, you know, different levels. Like, how could this have happened? Right? Like we all sat down as a group and how could this have happened? And of course, you know, there's still some skepticism because they're like, well, where the hell were you? But we did not see this lady open the door whatsoever. And it, you know, like we just saw the door fly open, but she said that she came right into the room. Like she opened the door, she looked right into the room, looked all around. She was standing right in the middle of the room and then she just couldn't see anybody. So she closed the door. It was weird, but I'll tell you, it was the only case. This was the only case where when I got home, I was, you know, like because you're not, I guess you're not in the zone yet. I don't know how to explain it. But I got home and I was sitting there and all of a sudden I started shaking. And that's where it hit me. And I went, what if I had gone downstairs by myself, which I originally was going to do. And that's where it kicked in. And that's where I went, this was the first case I've ever actually been scared on.
I don't blame you. That is truly fascinating. You know, with my mind, the way I'm thinking, I'm like, I would love to experience that.
If you have somebody with you, yes. But, you know, and it was weird because when I was sitting upstairs, that's all I kept hearing in my head. You know, go downstairs, come downstairs, come downstairs, come downstairs.
Well,
and I was more than ready to
medium.
go. What's that?
You're an incredibly gifted medium.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I must have been hearing something, you know, and I just felt compelled. I just felt compelled. Oh, I'm even giving shivers now. It's weird because it's been years since that happened. But that was probably the only time, even in my own house, you know, dealing with the Barbies and stuff, that was the only time that I was actually truly terrified. Yeah.
Wow.
Where it actually, and I told my daughter about it, you know, when I got home, and of course, you know, she's older at this point and, you know, stuff like that. And she looked at me and she had tears in her eyes and she goes, please don't go back to that house. Please promise me you'll never go back to that house again.
I take it you didn't.
No. We did go back. No, that's not true. We did go back, but the whole atmosphere of the house was different. We actually did not even have one incident the entire night. It was just weird.
Did you have different people?
We had a couple of different investigators with us. Yeah. When we went back, we didn't have a full different set of investigators, but we had a couple that couldn't have made it the first night, and they wanted to, see what it was like. And not one, we didn't even hear a creak. Like it was like a completely different home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there a resolution to this case?
No.
Or was it just an investigation?
It was just an investigation. The reason, actually, the lady, the family had wanted us out there was one of the things that they had said that was bothering them was that they would call down to their son, because it was their son's room that we were sitting in. And she said that they had seen shadows, and had different things happening, nothing of the major unusual or nothing that really creeped them out. But she said the one thing that really bothered her was the fact that she would call down to her son in his bedroom, and they would be practically yelling to him, and he would never hear them. She said sometimes we would go down there, and I guess they had accused him several times of sneaking out of the house because he wasn't in his room. But yet, minutes later, he would come upstairs and, why are you guys angry? So the same sort of experience that he like we had is what one of their complaints was. But they were a lot of times kind of putting it down to the fact, well, he's a teenager. He's probably just being a schmuck, and
Cathy, we've lost you again.
sorry.
All right, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. You got to the point where you said they thought he was perhaps just being a schmuck.
Right. Yeah. And, but, even though we inadvertently discovered this, we were able to verify verify that one claim, but it wasn't the main focus of the investigation at all. It was just one of those things that she had said casually, like, he can't seem to hear us, or we'll go down there and look for him, but he's not there. But it, that didn't, the main focus was actually on the baby in the house, and that they had seen shadows around this baby quite often. So, the teenager, or what was happening in the basement, wasn't even really on our radar to be investigating. It just happened inadvertently.
Well, here's an interesting question, and I don't have an answer for it. In a case like this, where you may have actually slipped into another dimension, is it possible there were no actual ghosts, but there were actual living inhabitants in a different dimension, and that's what people are picking up on?
I'm beginning to wonder that that was one of our thoughts, actually, at that time, because it was ultimately, when we did go back to that house, there was nothing. It was almost like, you almost want to think like it's like one dimension climbing into, like, bombarding the second dimension, but maybe it's not on a regular basis.
Right. And that's what I would theorize.
Yeah. Almost like, I hate to put it like that, but it's almost like, moon cycles or Earth rotation or whatever it possibly could be. But, that would be something that you'd have to pretty much probably spend a lot of time really looking into and really.
NASA has proven that the sun actually makes portals on the Earth of energy.
Oh.
Energy vortexes. So it is possible that it was a temporary situation or just a reoccurring phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely interesting.
And it'd be something really interesting to, this was years ago, obviously, but it would be something that would be very interesting to really do an in-depth investigation into, because it was just the weirdest experience. And like I said, we were right in front of them. We were probably about, a good 10 feet, 15 feet away from, where they all came downstairs. But you would think out of like 5 of them, somebody would notice us like 20 feet away, and we weren't obscured by anything. There was nothing in front of us. It was just open, empty basement where we were. Not one person saw us. Yeah. And so, yeah, you got to think, and it's also Indigenous ground, right? So, originally, like, and you who knows? Who really knows?
Now that's a great question. I have one final question for you.
Sure.
How would you recommend that people protect themselves?
Okay. Well, I think it would depend on if they have, if they're already feeling that they're having experiences, or whether or not they're just wanting to make sure that they don't. And I mean, the first thing I always truly look at is the law of attraction. I'm such a law of attraction fan. We've talked about this, raising your vibration, not focusing on the negative, all of that stuff. But for me personally, I mean, I really love the grounding technique, and is really changing your mindset to something of not focusing in on the past, not being fear of that future. It is that present moment. And I find that a lot of people, especially if they're dealing with paranormal activity, or if they're terrified of paranormal activity, maybe they've dealt with it in the past and they're scared of it going into the future. Our thoughts are so powerful, and what we're imagining, or what we're trying to not create, we will create. Right? So if we're focusing in on not having paranormal activity, we could possibly create that, right? Whereas just sort of living on their own, just living in the present, just focusing in on more of that moment. And, it's not an easy thing to do, but I do truly believe in grounding. And, if people can find a grounding technique that is good for them, especially in moments of panic, and it might take several methods, or several different, because every person is different. Not one method is going to work for everybody, but the internet is full of grounding, like to look up a method, right? And, and it can simply be as something as listening to a YouTube video that helps you align your chakra system.
Absolutely. There are great guided meditations out there.
Absolutely. And I find that the more that you try not to focus in on the drama of life, just who cares what the guy across the street is doing, as long as he's not hurting your house. Who cares if he's sitting in his car? You know what I mean? Like, stop focusing on the little tiny details of things and just sort of look at the big picture. But I feel like people get so lost in little tiny details that are truly if we look at it, they're of no consequence to things.
Right. Yeah. If something is going to bring you down, then why give it energy?
Exactly. Yeah. And, if you hear a noise within your house that makes you kind of twitch a little bit, look for the normal first, as opposed to assuming, it's paranormal, or assuming that it's unusual. Just look at it as it's being normal.
That's a great point. In my home, and I live, in the home of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And they stuck around a little bit after they died.
Yeah.
And every night I hear noises. I hear footsteps. I hear knocks. But I'm not going to jump at every one of them. For all I know, it's a squirrel, or it's, or
it's true, right?
Just about anything. And as long as I'm not jumping at it all the time, I'm not feeding into it. And it never manifests into anything greater.
Exactly. I'll tell you one really quick story, and it's funny because my roommate, I have a roommate that he rents a room here, and because of my work and the fact that I am a medium, things can tend to happen, and I would never put it down as a haunting. It's just things happen. And then my son, of course, he's very gifted, so And for somebody who's not comfortable in that realm, it can be, I guess, a little bit, because we're always, I'm either doing readings on the regular basis or, something is going on here all the time, like on a physical activity of ourselves, right? Not paranormally, but ourselves. And he was cleaning the basement one day, and this is just a really good example. He had gone downstairs to clean the basement, and I guess he felt like he was falling over, and he heard this noise, and he goes, it sounded like it said oopsie. And he goes, like, he came upstairs and he was pure white. And he's like, I think there's something in the basement. And he's shaking and he's just pure white. And I'm like, okay. And we haven't had activity here in, I don't even know how long. You know what I mean? Like, or if we haven't paid any attention to it. And he was just pure white and he's shaking. And I said, okay, well, just, don't worry about it. Whatever was there, obviously, if it says oopsie, it's not going to be, it's definitely not demonic or anything. So go do what you need to do. Well, he went downstairs again, but this is how people get freaked out. But, because he's lived with us for so long, he's kind of used to this stuff. But it was funny because as it turned out, he found exactly what it was that was saying oopsie. And it happened to be one of those, those Staples buttons where you press it and go, well, that was easy. so when he fell over, he accidentally stepped on this button here. That was easy, but it came out as oopsie. So if people really just sort of look at it and go, okay, you know what? That was probably really just a normal experience.
Exactly. So, Cathy,
it just changes stuff.
You're a professional medium.
Yes.
How can people get a hold of you if they would like to request a reading? And I'm going to let everyone know that you are a member of the foundation, but this is something you do professionally. And of course, there is a charge for doing this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I do readings. Now I charge $85 an hour for a reading. This is really in
Canadian.
depth. I mostly do. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Canadian. Yes. Sorry. I keep forgetting that different. But, it's actually quite an in-depth reading. Now, I do not focus on the paranormal, and so people never have to worry that I'm going to, this is what I do for my work. Is really what I like to do is, if you come to me with a goal and where you want to be, I can help you bring you there, or what it is that you may be blocking you, what your guides have to say, what your angels have to say. It's more guidance than it is anything else. And there's never, you're never going to walk away going, oh my God, she just told me that I have spirits all around. No, it doesn't work like that. But as I'm doing my work, sometimes people will come through, or if there's somebody specific that you would like me to look, to try to make contact with. Absolutely. I usually prefer a picture just so I can, focus in on them. And it will usually be a very detailed thing. And it's about an hour. They can reach me actually through my Facebook page, which is Spiritual Readings and Tarot by Catherine. And either through Facebook or even through Instagram.
All right. Thank you, Cathy.
Thank you so much, Chris.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. You've been very fascinating.
Oh, thank you. I always enjoy talking to you, Chris.
Well, we'll be talking again soon.
Thank you so much. You take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.